Well, this is Guns, Knives, and Watches, and anybody that's seen my videos over the years knows I've been working on this Pathfinder knife, trying to get the correct finishes on it and the correct geometry. And this is from, of course, Blind Horse Knives. I guess they call it Battle Horse Knives, and there's the new one now. But I'll just show you what I use. I basically use a metal pan with water in it, and then I use the Shapton system. This is the 500 grit Shapton glass ceramic. That 500 grit gives you this finish on the side of this blade, okay? Now, a lot of sharpening systems, that is as detailed as they go, okay? And as you can see, I've been squaring up the back edge and then squaring up the two sides for forever. I'll pick it up and then you know, start working on it. But I've almost gotten it to where it's square and flat and everything. Why is that important? It's important for a couple different reasons. One, it had a very coarse finish on it, and this is one that I started with, and you can see those vertical striations. Those are ones that I've started. I put on I think 1,000 grit, and just saw where some of the high spots were on that knife. This was a knife that was really messed up the most, and I've been basically, as I said, squaring everything up, knocked those edges off there so it wouldn't tear up my sheath, squaring this edge up on the back so that it works better. Now, why is this important to me? Well, if you are in a survival situation, you know how to survive out in the wilderness and do things like that, you are now 100% of the survival community. You are a member of that. How do you go from being a member of the 100% to being more efficient, better, faster, stronger, that type shit? Well, you have to work on your tools. And since this is a Scandi grind blade, that is, there is actually, I hate to sit there and say it, there are custom knife makers that make these knives, and this was about a $300 or $400 knife, I forget, it doesn't really matter. For that you get just a basic knife with a sheath, Kydex and leather, and you get your fire steel, which you have to modify because it's not right, and then you get a knife that the geometry is all screwed up on, and that the edge is crap. Because this is after I've put it on a sharpening stone, and as you can sit there and see, they buffed and sharpened that other edge, but you've got to get the whole Scandi grind down to that level for you to get what you see in front of you, which is the correct way of sharpening a Scandi grind. Now, that 500 grit, that's what most sharpeners only go to like 600. If you look at this polished edge right here, that's actually 4,000 grit, and I've actually screwed up that finish by just working on the flats here, because I've rubbed a cloth across it that had the grit and all this other crap, so I've damaged that myself. But if you realize that you know how to survive out in the wilderness, and you want to take it from being the 100% to being the 1 or the 5 or the 10 or at least the top 50%, you have to work on your gear. And you have to understand what the limitations of your gear are, and then try to improve them. You know, of course, this is 01 steel. It rusts. A very coarse finish that was on this knife in the beginning not only is not as sharp, number one, as this knife is, it has all of the pores actually opened onto the metal, which this one is, and it's not squared up. The surfaces aren't flat. The 90 degree isn't perfectly 90 degrees, and it's still not. You can sit there and see, even on this edge after I've worked on it, that there's a shiny part right there, which I've actually never touched. Even though I have gone along the back of the knife, squared it up, and worked on this, and you can sit, let me try to get to a better point. You can sit there and see that it starts right back in here. I've never touched any of that surface right through there on that corner, because I'm just trying to, as I said, square this knife up. And you know, it's a process to take it from a $300 or $400 knife to $1,000 or plus, you know, custom wilderness blade. And you're going to have to spend some time on it. It almost becomes a hobby. But to go from that just member of 100% to the top of, you know, your class, and I know I don't have the lanyard on it, and I take it off when I'm doing all of this, you know, you've got to push it to the next level. And this is this knife's next level. Now, once I get it flat and get everything corrected about it, like, you know, back in here, and I've had to, you know, redo all of this, and this is something that this knife, there was nothing right about this knife, but I've managed to improve it to the point to where it's at least usable at a level that I can operate in, and makes my life easier, instead of where I just basically have a chisel or a wedge or a pry bar that's slightly sharpened that I can beat through something, to actually where it becomes a knife. Anyway, this is Guns, Knives, and Watches, and these are some of the things that if you want to move from that place of just being a person who can survive to a person who can survive well and do it very efficiently and effectively, these are some of the things that you have to take into account. You have to take your gear to the next level. This is Guns, Knives, and Watches, and have a good one.